Alrighty guys, welcome to the new 8-week training block brought to you by Limitless Building Co. Building Co. All jokes aside, alright, I don't have my Unbound shirt, but let's have a quick run through on what we can expect in the training cycle. So let you guys go through week 1, get a little bit of exposure so you have some context around what we're talking about. Right, this new training cycle is only 8 weeks, not 12 weeks. We're going to utilize it as a opportunity to build some base mechanics and base fitness, alright, around some things like gymnastics, your Olympic lifting and your conditioning. What that looks like, I've just defined this as some simple goals for us. Right, so goals, simple baseline metrics, what we're looking at in terms of those metrics and how we define them, right, through this training block is going to be gymnastics. Gymnastics is going to be your shapes. So we look at our hollows and our arches, making sure they're nice and tight, nice and efficient, right, and then our strict strength. So strict handstands, strict pull-ups, right, and even things like your push-ups and some of your conventional bodyweight movements are also going to be defined as your strict gymnastics. Pistol squats, yes, that falls into that category. Your Olympic lifting will be breaking down into specific phases of the lifts. So what we're looking for here, you'll see things like your snatch lift-offs, your pause snatch pulls, your snatch balances, your overhead squats, your pressing behind the neck snatch press. You've got your pull-unders on your cleans, your lift-offs, same concept, all right? So we take the entire movement, we basically simplify it by only practicing and executing a certain phase of that movement. So for example, the first pull, and then we add some rules in there is what I like to call them. So things like the 2-second pause in our weaker positions, or what I would call our disadvantaged positions. These positions are generally where you'll be the weakest or the hardest portion of the movement, but by adding pauses in that section of the movement, it allows us to build strength there, right, and address for most of us our lowest hanging fruit, which allows us to improve. Now, on the back end of this, as we move into our next training block, we'll go back into our full Olympic lifts, and then we'll go through a proper strength cycle again. So think of this as an 8-week block to build us up to the next 12-week block, to make sure that we have the tolerance, we have the positions, right? What we're looking for is to make sure we're moving well, we have the joint integrity, right? We address any niggles and injuries that we might have or any imbalances, right? And then we develop the prerequisites for our base fitness level to make sure that we're able to recover from the next training block as well. Faster you recover, harder you can push, the more adaptation you'll get across that 12-week period. So for example, shots at Tyler, but if we have a look at the powerlifters at the moment who are maybe neglecting some of the fitness side of it or the basic fitness side of it, right? Tyler kind of comes in with the base fitness level, so not a great example, but what would happen is their recovery would tend to be longer, all right? So what they're getting out of their sessions in terms of recovery, right? They might take 5 to 7 days to recover and then push up that intensity again, as where someone with the higher base fitness level might take 2 days, right? So across a 12-week period, they're just able to get more intent through each session, which then will directly correlate to more output on the other end. And that's going to be done in our conditioning side of things. So we will have machines, and then basically our ability to breathe is what we're going to define that as. All right, so when we're working through on these machines, spending time there so that we can work out how we actually breathe. Part of breathing is pacing, so making sure that you allow your heart rate time to build, right, and basically move oxygen around the body. It's not just 3, 2, 1 sprint, Chris Johnson, right, and then you hit a little bit of a shock and you have a 20-minute AMRAP that you need to try and sustain your intensity. Now we'll do this in a few ways. So we'll do this with the classic CrossFit Mech-On scenario where we have the couplets, we have the triplets, we have the chippers, but then I've programmed some secondary stuff there in the accessory work or the extras, which will allow you guys to target these single modalities. So it'll allow you guys to target your rowing, allow you guys to target your echo bike, and we're even going to have ski, all right, and your C2 bike in there as well. Now, obviously more time, or if we just look at it from a very simple point of view, right, it's consistency and time on machine, so irrelevant of the task that I give you guys. If I just said to you 3 days a week, you're just gonna sit on the row for 10 minutes over an 8-week period, I guarantee from week 1 to week 8, you will see improvement. All right, so a lot of it is just making sure that we actually don't avoid the thing or avoid the constraint, all right, in terms of our fitness and our ability to progress, and we just give it some attention and give it some time. Now, I've defined that in your secondary goals. This will be in our extras. We've got some squat strength endurance. So coming out of the previous phase, we had some questions around how do we maintain our squats? How do we maintain some of the adaptations that we had from the previous cycle? The best way to do this is think minimum effective dose, all right? Basically, progress will lie where attention lies. So where you give attention is generally where you will grow and where you will develop. Where you don't give attention and what you ignore will generally always be the constraint. That being said, all right, we have other things that we're going to be focusing on in this cycle, so we don't necessarily want to be squatting 3 days a week. What we can do is look at minimum effective dose. General rule of thumb is about 25% that I like to work off, right? That's my personal bias, that what I've found, or what I found works with clients over the years. And that will be, for example, if I've been squatting 4 days a week, I probably only need to squat 1 day a week. The other way I like to look at it is just workload. So if I'm doing 100 reps per week, all right, I would only need to do 25 reps per week to maintain that. Now, I've written that on your Tuesdays for you guys so that you guys have an opportunity there to do that in the extras. And I've gone with the approach of giving you intensity sets at the end, all right? So you guys will work basically RP8 for your first 3 sets, and then your final set, you'll do an AMRAP effort, which will be your intensity set. So it's where you will take that set to threshold, just so that we avoid any diminishing returns. If we do take any of our sets to failure too early, what you will find is that will directly affect your corresponding set. So if we go and we max out set 1, right, we're going to get diminishing returns on set 2, set 3, and set 4. This is the best way to make sure that we address all of it. All right, so we're getting enough volume in, but then we're also getting enough intensity in at the back end. We'll do our single modality fitness, which we touched on with the machines, and then, yes, more core work. All right, now I've defined this as functional, not fiction. Now, what I mean by that, we all know someone who has abs and can't do toes to bar. All right, we all know someone who has a nice hot 6-pack and can't do a 20-second hollow hold. So what we're looking to do is not necessarily develop the aesthetics, all right, but actually develop the functionality of that bracing mechanic. All right, so for this, I like to think of it as 360 degrees, front, sides, and back. All right, you are always going to have a constraint with the one that you pay the least amount of attention to. Lowest hanging fruit that I personally see is always going to be anti-rotation or targeting obliques, and then the erectors, so targeting the back specifically to make sure that you are able to support the positions. And then finally, it will be the ability to create abdominal pressure. So that's written in there. You guys don't need to know all the details. What I would suggest, if any of these 3 is going to be most important, always going to be the last one. All right, the sexiest one will probably be the squat strength endurance. Make you feel good, all right? You'll feel like your social status is on the way up because you're squatting heavier than everyone else, right? But in terms of function and injury prevention, definitely going to be the bottom one, all right? So if you can't hit all 3 sessions, that's fine, all right? Go for more core. The other way to think about it, all right, what type of athlete are you? Are you a strength athlete? If you're a strength athlete, you probably don't necessarily need to spend that much time on strength. For example, I'm not defined as a strength athlete. If I'm not squatting, all right, within 2 weeks, I have a huge drop off on my performance on my squat. Now, if we have a look at something like pressing endurance for me, so something like a handstand push-up, I can not do handstand push-ups for probably 3 months, come back and still hit about 95% of my AMRAP effort or my max effort. Very similar with my strict press. That's just specific to me, which means I don't necessarily need to be doing that much of it, even though if I did do a heap of it, it always makes me feel better because I'm able to outperform everyone else. But in terms of me progressing as an athlete, all right, and getting the most out of it, my attention doesn't need to lie there. Now, on the other side of it, if you're that cardio bunny, you're probably going to find that you need to prioritize the squatting. All right, if you're the strength bunny, you probably need to prioritize the single modality fitness. All right, balance the 2 ideally, but that is just if we need to maximize our time and investment. Now, on the other side of it, a bit of breakdown on structure. Right, it's an 8-week cycle. We'll be moving through couplets, triplets, and chippers. We have a fortnightly rotation that I've given you guys, so you won't really see too much similarity with the fortnightly rotation, but week 1 and week 3 will be a periodization, week 2, week 4, and we'll continue in that fashion for the 8 weeks. That will give you enough variety so you don't get bored, but it's still going to give you enough specificity so that we actually improve and get the adaptation that we're looking for. We have EMOMs, intervals, and it's time-based and task-based. Time-based just means where I give you 30 seconds, accumulate as much volume as you can, for example. Task-based would be where I say you've got 1 minute to accumulate 20 reps. So I'm telling you how much work I'd like you to do. You then have individual workouts, paired workouts, and team workouts. Again, trying to keep it nice and fun. Teams paired will give us the opportunity to work a little bit more intervals. Individual will give us the opportunity to try and work a little bit more on the endurance and that continual fatigue element. We're then going to look at training intent. All right, so training intent is probably one of the most deliberate things. We can give you the structure, all right, but it's the intent and the execution that drives the result. One of the biggest things with it will be consistency. So making sure, if we have a look at the fact that we have 8 weeks, right, we've got 6 days of programming. So we're looking at a fair few sessions. We want to make sure that we're probably hitting somewhere between depending where you are, if you normally do 3 sessions per week, probably 4 sessions. If you normally do 4 sessions, probably 5 sessions, and 5 sessions, maybe 6 sessions. And then we just need to manage our food, right? So our nutrition side of things, our sleep, and our recovery. So make sure that we're doing the things to tolerate that so we can maximize what we get out of the back end. Now, training intent will just be making sure that we have the intent to make sure that it's individualized based on our specific goals or what we value. So through this phase, if I'm looking to get stronger, right, if we do have recommended loading and it's quite comfortable for us, we can always increase, and we want to try and chase that. It does mean that we're going to finish probably last in the workout. So for me personally, this is something that I'm going to try and utilize through this training block, where in the workout scenarios, there might be a prescribed weight of 70 kilos. Rather than racing, going for intensity and being like, oh, there's a 16-minute time cap, I can finish this in 11. I'm going to look at it as a 16-minute window and be like, all right, what weight do I need to do where I'm pretty much going to be on the back end of that time cap? So I'm going to be around 15 and a half or 15 minutes to 16 minutes. All right, I'm not necessarily finishing with 11 minutes. What I'm looking at is if I've done 11 minutes of work, all right, my intensity is up. I feel good because I finished the workout fast, but it's not necessarily progressing the needle in terms of me improving strength. And there's 5 minutes of work that I've missed out on. All right, so I could have been working on my strength for an extra 5 minutes, but I didn't. Instead, I chased the feeling of trying to feel like I'm ahead of everyone just because I beat them on the workout. And I probably beat them on the workout because I'm already good at those movements. All right, so it's something just to consider. You shouldn't always be racing. You're always racing and you're trying to make things suit you and where you're at. You're really just stroking your ego, but you're not necessarily moving the needle. Now, that doesn't mean don't do it. Obviously, it's always nice to feel good. It just means make sure we balance things, all right? From there, we want to try and make sure that we also, on the other side of it, all right, trying to just pay attention to certain things. So I personally, with my clients, will always try and give them the idea that the metrics that we're looking for, the feedback that we're looking for is always going to come from our body. Yes, we have all these watches, we have all these tools to track, all right, that bring awareness to it, which is great, but we want to try and make sure that we listen to our body. So if we do have little niggles or anything like that, if you don't know what that means, talk to the coaches. The coaches will be able to assist you with that, right, and adjust sessions. There's no reason why we can't train through these training blocks with injuries. I personally always look at an injury as a positive, reason being, you only have so much attention, all right? Attention is not infinite. So if we look at CrossFit and how many movements and disciplines we need to work on, all right, there's a lot that needs our attention. Now, if we have an injury, so let's say I hurt my shoulder and I can't go overhead for 2 weeks, there's a whole heap of movements that don't need my attention for 2 weeks, which means my attention can now go on to all the other things, all right? So I get to now move the needle here a little bit more, right, just while I recover, all right, and get back from injury, and then I'm able to progress those things, all right? So you'll always find if you have the right approach to injury, right, you'll generally improve a lot faster because there's just less things for you to focus on, all right? So you can always spin it into a positive. Now, the other thing that I do want you guys to work on, or something that I made a note of, trying to be a little bit funny here, we don't care if you win the workout, we only care if you improve. All right, so winning the workout, I know a lot of us chase that. It makes us feel good, but it's not necessarily moving the needle. And at the end of the day, we come here, we train because we want to try and improve. All right, so if I have a weak squat, I want to try and improve my squat. Why? I might have weak joint integrity, so I might be a little bit more susceptible to injuries. So we want to try and make sure that we understand what the constraints are. If I'm not good at mobility, fortunately, your constraint is most likely going to be mobility, right? Which means the more you avoid it, the harder it's going to be for you to move forward. Same thing, if the constraint is cardio, right? You struggle to breathe, your heart rate's always spiking, you're always having to over rest. Unfortunately, it means, yes, we need to just address the constraint, right? Rather than avoid the constraint, and that will allow us to move forward. Now, I'm gonna give you guys an example of some of the workouts across the next 2 weeks of that fortnightly rotation. I'll chuck them up on the board for you guys in the background of this video so you can have a quick look through. If you do have any questions through this training block, make sure that you message me. If there's anything you feel like is missing, let me know. I've done my best to try and make sure that I've covered everything. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to be covered. All right, so I'm not gonna get everything right. I don't expect to, but give me as much feedback as you can and I can always try and improve it. Just remember, the goal of this 8-week block is to set you up for the next 12-week cycle, right? So yes, you might see some of those compound movements not in there as much, but that's not a bad thing, all right? We want to think of training as seasonal. So if we look at how we generally move through things, especially in a CrossFit scenario, it is not a bad thing to keep things seasonal. Bias strength for a little bit, bias cardio for a little bit, come back to the metabolic conditioning for a little bit. It keeps things interesting. It allows us to develop things we need to develop, right? And then it also reduces the chance of your overuse injuries, because you're not just hitting the same nail over and over and over again, right? It starts to allow you to have some variety. Enjoy the 8 weeks, guys. As I said, talk to coaches, give us as much feedback as you can.